still making sure that the summit has been up and running today, as well as all of our events this week for International Education Week. So I will say that this is our first in-person summit that we have had since 2019. And of course, the world has changed a lot since then. We're still dealing with a global pandemic that has affected our daily lives. There's a war in Ukraine that has destabilized the region and affected the lives of civilians in the area. There's civil unrest in several different parts of the globe that have highlighted a bunch of social injustice everywhere. We're dealing with natural disasters associated with climate change, like you see this recent flooding in Pakistan and Nicaragua. All of these things are very scary, right? And they're very scary for our students as well. And that's kind of the spirit in which we're doing this summit. We as educators have the ability to help our students develop the skills, the tools, and the agency to be global change makers and to feel confident going into a world to change it for the better in terms of justice and sustainability. And that's the goal of our summit every year, is to build agency among our students. So in that vein, we're working on this today. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Debra Rowe. Dr. Rowe is the president of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development. And as such, she convenes and catalyzes leaders across countries in business, education, communities, and other sectors to create integrated sustainable development goals and climate solutions. She co-authored the UNEP Global Guidance on Education for Green Jobs and facilitated their solution summits in international community on greening the workforce. Dr. Rowe heads 2 action groups for the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, Education for Green Jobs, and the SDG Publishers Compact Fellows Program. 19 years ago, she founded and still runs networks of over 60 higher education and technical education associations for sustainability. In addition, she mentors numerous youth coalitions working on clean energy and climate solutions. Dr. Rowe teaches renewable energies, sustainable development, and related topics, and received numerous awards, including an Energy Education Award at MIT from CEM. She's on the Global Steering Committee for Power for All. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rowe to Harvard College.
All right, I rarely need a microphone, but can you hear me all right? If I get too loud, let me know. Okay? So first I want to thank you. I want to thank you because I've done work at over 100 colleges and universities like Penn State, lots of community colleges, lots of other places around the world, helping them integrate sustainability into who they are and what they do and what they graduate in terms of the capabilities and the self-concept of their students. And it all started in a learning communities conference, believe it or not, at Frankenmuth a long time ago. And Harper Rainey was there, and you guys were a leader. Are you still a leader in learning communities? You used to be big leader. Yeah, I'm getting some yeses. So learning community, what did that allow us to do? It allowed us to do an interdisciplinary course where we had I teach psychology too, and business too. You know, community colleges, you get a master's, you can teach there too, right? So we had a psychology course, an intro to psychology, an American government class, microeconomics, I forget, it's a long time ago, and an English class. And they all were offered at the same time, and we added a half an hour onto the end of the schedule and put a little asterisk. You will be doing a group project during this time, and it will be part of your homework. And so we had students go into interdisciplinary groups. We actually gave them 45 minutes each week. I know resting those extra 15 minutes away from those faculty who have so much content that they want to share, and they need to get through all their content. Well, we were getting to transformational education, and once they got it, they gave us not just a half an hour, but 45 minutes. And each week we had 3 students from psychology, 3 students from economics, 3 students from English, 3 students from American government in small groups of 12. And their task was to envision a positive scenario for the future of humanity. And then to come and do a presentation about it. But they had to tell the story of how we got from today's world to this positive future. The positive future could be 40 years out, or it could be 20 years out, or it could be 100 years out. And they did give us, the faculty, one day where we all met in the auditorium and the students shared the scenarios. For 7 years we did this, based on your learning communities model, and we shared it with colleges and universities around the world where it was picked up by others, and then high schools wanted to do it too because our young people get too much doom and gloom, way too much doom and gloom. And so we had Black males from disadvantaged communities in the city of Detroit who were going to a school district at the time that wasn't putting out students with adequate study skills to perform well, especially if they had been iffy students, right, as they were going through because of challenges at home. Those students would come to these interdisciplinary learning communities, and even though they might flunk their first test in their class, they kept coming. They didn't drop out. And we said, why? You know, we did some qualitative stuff, and they said, because nobody's ever asked me to think about a positive future for society, and that I could be a part of creating that. Transformational education, changing their self-concept of who they can be in the world, not just giving them the skills to be change agents, but the attitudes to be able to be an effective change agent in the world. So, starting with what I did with you in Frankenmuth, where I presented with this guy who also turned out to be my husband. Thank you very much. 21 years of very happy life. We then went on to present all over the world and to share that message of the importance of interdisciplinary thinking and acting and learning. So, okay, so now I'm ready to present. We just have to start with a thank you. What do I do? Just click on, oh, here she is. Right. So, this is the topic that we came up with for you. And listen, I'm real flexible here, okay? If you want to take this presentation somewhere else, I'll go with you. Because I hear a lot of you are already champions at education and actions for sustainability. We should have called it education and actions, okay? Because this is about taking actions in the real world. Anybody here who's an armchair pontificator, you love your stage, you like presenting your content, and then you measure how much of the content you presented they memorized, and there really isn't a lot of time for them to talk because you have so much you have to say. Yeah. We can't graduate one more armchair pontificator if we want to move towards a sustainable future, and we shouldn't be modeling it in our classrooms. So, my students get so excited about being part of making the world a better place that they actually sit down and read that textbook. Because if they don't, then I have to back up what I'm doing and give them the lecture, and that takes up time that we could be doing other things that are so exciting. Look, I've been teaching psychology for 30 years. I've been teaching renewable energies for 45 years. I know where they get stuck, the difference between correlation and formal experiment. We all have our little places that are hard. You gotta explain classical conditioning better than what the book does. We all have the pieces of the book where we know where our educational materials. We've got to do a little bit of in-class tutoring, but there's so much they can pick up by themselves. And when we give them that, then we can use our classroom time to help them become effective change agents to create a sustainable future, to learn how to cope effectively with the impending doom and gloom. They have the coping skills, the vision, and the exciting change agent skills, and to be able to practice being a change agent while they're in class. Because if they don't practice being a change agent while they're here, they're passive recipients, maybe with some interactive conversation or labs, they will not graduate as change agents. So, I'm sharing a lot of stuff with you that came from a lot of people, so I thank you, all the people around the world who have shared this with me so I can share it with you. But all of these things I've done, I'm really just a community college teacher. And I went to the community college on purpose because I knew I wanted to make the world a better place. I grew up in Detroit. Lots of reasons when you grow up in Detroit that you seek to make the world a better place. And I knew with our schedule, even with full overload, that I still would have time to do the engagement in the real world, first myself and then with my students, so I picked it on purpose. I went to hoity-toity universities. I could have had a hoity-toity university job and done the research, but I wanted a community college. And from there, I've been a professional nudger and nurturer. What's the word in Spanish for nudger? Is there a word in Spanish for nudger? You know what a nudger is? You go to the people who are in positions to make a decision to make the world a better place, but they're not acting fast enough or not acting at all. And you say what I call my 2 magic sentences. You are in a unique and important position to help create a sustainable future. We can't imagine doing this without you. We're convening other decision makers like you, and it would really be an empty, vacant place in the room if you didn't come. We want your brain in on this. Okay, maybe that was 4 magic sentences, which I've shared with colleagues, which they've used. And so we just started convening people. So here I am, a community college professor. I'm at 1 DuPont Circle. You know what that is? It's a higher ed building in Washington, D.C. And I look at all of these higher ed associations, and they all have staff, and they all have money, and none of them are doing anything for sustainability. And I thought, what is wrong with this picture? So I found some women who had gone to the UN conference for women, and they said, Debra, who are you waiting for? In fact, Jean McGregor, who was your keynote at your Learning Communities conference, turned to me and specifically said, Debbie, who are you waiting for? Just go do it. So I did. So I found this woman at the American Association of Community Colleges from one of the other women. You know, you do networking. She said, Debbie, here's who you invite, and we can give you the room at 1 DuPont, and you can put together a thing on education and actions for sustainable development. I was so nervous, because who am I, right? That I had a friend of mine who works at SCOP, the Society for College and University Planning. I said, you've just got to come. You just got to come. So in case I implode in the middle of this, you know, you can stand up and say stuff until I get myself back together again. And there were many times that morning where I would just look over at them, get recentered, and continue on. I'm just a community college teacher, which is an incredibly privileged and powerful place from which to change the world. So what gave me the idea I should even think about this? Well, I'll tell you more about that as we go along. Not because I want to talk about myself, but because I want to help make it become more alive in your students and in this whole institution and the other institutions that are here today. So here's our agenda. I don't know, does everybody know what this is? I'm not sure, so we'll talk about what the education and actions for sustainable development are. We'll talk about the trends, a little bit of what's happening. I'll share learning outcomes. Do you all have learning outcomes already for sustainable? Oh, I should have found them out ahead of time. I'd like to see yours. Well, I'll share some that came from College Student Educators International. And then I'll talk about core pedagogies and change agent skills, and then how do you create course assignments, and then I'm going to shut up. And you all are going to create some assignments. These assignments are going to be assignments where students can practice being change agents while still learning the content they need to learn in their class. And then we'll talk about how do you institutionalize that. I think all the way through I'll talk about international perspectives on sustainable development. I don't know how to keep it out of my talking nowadays. And I know I used to talk slower. I know that. And I turned into a bit of a fire hose. I know that. So if I start to, just say, hey, Deb, slow down. Because you need processing time, right? And I need processing time. I'd like you to think about something as we're moving along, which is, where are you stuck about education and actions for sustainable development? I'd really like to know. I put together these slides in this presentation because that's what keynotes do, but honestly, for the last few years, I've stopped doing keynotes that way. What I've done instead is I walk in and I say, well, everybody write down where you're stuck on education and actions for sustainable development on a little sheet of paper. Would you please hand it up? And then my keynote is meeting you at your stuck places and helping you figure out the strategy. So we will take some time to do that. And if your response is, well, I'm not stuck because I'm not really deeply engaged in it, that's a stuck place. That's okay. You can write that down on your little slip of paper. But I'd love it if I could get little slip of papers here. So as we go along, okay, and I'll ask in a little while for you to send them up. I think there's another piece here. Oh, yeah. We'll talk about careers. So, okay. Throughout, we're going to talk about the importance of community partners. I didn't connect with you early enough in your planning of the event, but normally the way that I work is when I come to an institution, we have the faculty, we have the staff, we all from each of the different areas, then we have somebody from the mayor's office, then we have somebody from the sustainability committee in the community if there is one, then we have somebody from United Way, somebody from the Chamber of Commerce, somebody from nonprofit organizations that are working on sustainability, all in the room with you. Have you had that meeting yet? No? You might want to organize it after I'm gone, because those are your partners. That's where your projects can come from, that will keep your students up at night with enthusiasm as they apply the concepts they're learning in your class to the real world. Oh, by the way, I didn't finish that story about that interdisciplinary project. You know how the students have a vision of the future? So, as they did the vision of the future, presented it all in the auditorium, 7 years, 12 groups each year, of 12 students each, all the scenarios sounded the same. And I was like, wait, we gotta put boundaries around this, right? Like, we gotta say you can't kill people in order to create a positive future. You can't be non-inclusive. You know, what if we get Nazis in the group? And my fellow professor said, let the students manage it. And all the scenarios look the same. A kind future, an inclusive future where people's basic needs are met and there are more opportunities to self-actualize, where we weren't damaging the planet. So exciting to see, almost like a collective consciousness or collective unconscious, you might say, but it was right there. Then they did something else for that assignment. They invited the organizations that were helping to create that positive future. And they called it a Positive Futures Fair. And they wrote a press release, and we sent it out through the college. We did this every year for however many years we did it. And we invited the public to come. And all these organizations would come in and talk about how they're helping to create a more positive future. They still do it at my college. That's like 30 years later. We still have a Positive Futures Fair each year. And they talk about, and the students get to put on their resume, I helped organize a conference, and they talk about career and volunteer opportunities. So they line the halls with these tables so students can have the one-on-one conversations, and the public can too with these organizations. But then they go into the auditorium and they talk about career and volunteer opportunities, which oftentimes, as you know, the volunteer opportunity turns into the career. All right, let's stick to this agenda for a little bit, but as you can tell, I'm not going to be very good at sticking to it. Here's the formal definition of sustainable development. If some of you in here need to create your own definition, will you please go form a subcommittee, leave the rest of us alone, and in about a year you'll come back with a definition that's pretty similar to this, but meanwhile we've got things we got to do. So this came out of over 170 countries. They got together and said, we need to do sustainable development, and you can read it. Meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. But it's way more than that. Another way to think of sustainable development is the shared responsibility, I like saying, and opportunity for improving quality of life for everybody, economically, socially, and environmentally, now and for future generations. So one of the things I do, I teach Intro to Psych, and I have a very weird class. Because in the first class, I establish who's the boss. Who is the boss? Who's getting paid? Yeah, it says I'm the boss. Actually, the students are the boss. They pay our salaries to teach us something, and I empower them with the knowledge that they are the boss. And if they don't like the way I'm teaching them, that they can come tell me. I got multiple ways to teach any concept, any skill set. And boy, do they change through the semester as they see themselves as boss. And then I tell them how to give feedback effectively so that they don't go and blow up at other professors. So I'm the boss. They learn how to do nurturing of their other educators, not just in class, but for the rest of their life. But the other thing I do in that class is I say, do you know what the number one indicator is of happiness in life when we do measurements of what makes people happy? Isn't it funny there's robust research on this and we didn't learn it in like 5th grade? Anybody know what it is? Isn't that weird? It's the quality of our personal relationships. Is the number one indicator of how happy you're going to be in your life. Here's the second weird thing. We know a lot about how to build healthy relationships. A lot. Where does it get taught? What's wrong with our curriculum? That we are not teaching the skills of emotional intelligence, interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills. Okay, maybe counseling has a little bit of it, or maybe you can pick it up along here, but it should be front and center, because otherwise we're mean to each other. We react in ways that are defensive when we could instead be open listeners and understand and do conflict resolution, or maybe worse, we turn into passive people who avoid conflict, and then we don't get our needs met, and then we don't have healthy relationships. So teaching assertiveness skills and emotional intelligence, I do this through the whole class. That's not what Intro to Psychology is supposed to be. I teach the book too. They learn all that stuff too. Algebra. I taught applied math for 22 years. Can we talk about algebra for just a second? I got any math teachers in here? When's the last time any of you used the quadratic equation? Oh, how many of you had to take algebra in high school? Yeah, raise your hand high so everybody can see. So that's required. And interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence isn't. What is friggin' wrong with our curriculum? Just because we used to do things that way, we're going to continue to do it this way, and then we wonder why the kids are mean to each other? We have so much power to fix this. Look up the world of positive psychology. You don't even have, don't wait until you've screwed up your life and end up in the therapist's office. Learn the skills so that you don't screw up your life. It's so wonderful to have great relationships. It does bring so much happiness. And we can teach that. And we can model it in all of our courses. And I know a lot of you do as instructors, right? You are modeling that stuff, but it's probably ad hoc, isn't it? Hey, bring me back. Let's do a professional development on that one. I'd love to do that with you, not at you, right? So I think that math should be applied all the way through. I had to start teaching renewable energies before I understood that an integral and a derivative had to do with how a thermostat gets to its set point more effectively. If they had told me that at the beginning of calculus, it would have been a lot easier for me to understand the concepts. And it would be great, don't you think, to teach financial literacy and organizational budgets and governmental budgets? You know, I could teach algebra and that at the same time. Where's that textbook? So we start thinking about what do we need to have a more sustainable future. And then here's the key, we do more than think about it, we act on it. So how many of you are already change agents in your community? Let me just see. One. Jose, you are, you gotta raise your hand, sorry. 2, 3, 4. How can you teach it if you don't know how to be it, right? So today is about helping you, and I know, you're so busy, how do I have time to be a change agent? Hey, I have your job. Granted, my husband does the dishes. But I have your job, 6 kids, 10 grandkids, and I've been able to do all this stuff. So if you want to talk about work-life balance, I'm glad to talk to you about that another time. It used to be that we thought about sustainable development as a combination of healthy environment, social well-being, and a strong economy, what we would call the triple bottom line of sustainability. That's how we would understand it, we would teach it. But then we dug in a bit more. I love this. This came off of actually a brochure for an international summit on education for sustainability. It enables people to develop the knowledge, values, and skills. We can teach that stuff, right? Well, values, we did a whole conversation about that. Everything you teach is value laden. Don't say for a second that there are no values in what you teach. Everything, the set of what you choose to teach is a value decision, and it's worthwhile exploring that. Anyway, it enables people to develop the knowledge, values, and skills. 2, this is the most important phrase, participate in decisions. Do things that will improve the quality of life now without damaging the planet for the future. You will all get all these slides. They're yours. Use them. You want to say my name, fine if you want. I really don't care. I'm so old and I've gotten so many of those things, you know, I don't care anymore. Own them. Build your own career. What are the roles that adults need? These skills in, these approaches of actually being active workers. So in our Education for Green Jobs Global Guidance document that we did with UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, we talk about that there are 3 types of green jobs. Now this isn't in the slides, so those of you who are interested in green jobs, you might want to take notes on this. There's 3 types of green jobs. There's the kind that are listed on LinkedIn. You know, that you go apply, the ones where you go apply. Then there's the being an entrepreneur. So it's, you start a company in an area that maybe didn't exist before. So energy managers. That profession did not exist before. How did it get created? People walked into buildings and said, I'm going to save you money on your energy. I want you to pay me 20% of what I save you. Those were your early energy managers. Or hire me, pay me a salary. If I don't save you at least that much this year, I'll pay you back the difference. That's how the field of energy managers got born. Entrepreneurship. But the third way that you do a green and sustainability job is you become an intrapreneur. And an intrapreneur, it's like entrepreneur with an I at the beginning. You're somebody you're working anywhere. You could be anywhere. But you bring a sustainability lens and intention to what you do. And you share your enthusiasm for making the world a better place. So here's this guy who had to take my class, because you have to take energy management at my college if you're going to be a heating and cooling guy. So they all get exposed to me, and it's like, what? Climate change? Isn't that a hoax? And why do I have to take this class? I just want to work on fossil fuel, by the way, furnaces. And I say, by the time I'm done with them, they're like, oh, I could save money. I could make the air cleaner. Oh, wow. So this guy worked as a manager at Kentucky Fried Chicken. And all he did was an energy audit on his own Kentucky Fried Chicken. And by the time he was done, he saved them so much money, he became the national energy manager at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Any organization you work in, just ask around. This is the model they used at Emory University. Who's worried about the future in terms of the environment, social justice? We're gonna get brown bag lunches. Come and eat with us. And then, pandemic time, we're gonna get virtual lunches. Come and sign on. And the next thing you know, you've got this coalition of enough people who care that you can change things in your organization. We did that at my community college, and I think it was, what's 47 minus 12? 35 years ago, we made sustainability components part of the Gen Ed core requirements for all students. Just starting out with talking to other people who care and building a coalition. I don't have time for that. Really? Don't you eat anyway? Right? Don't they vote on changing Gen Ed core requirements anyway? Well, how'd you get that through the Gen Ed core requirements? You want to hear this one? This one's really good. This one's really good. We have this guy at the college who's got a lot of power, and what he likes to do is cut other people down. He's not a healthy person. And so I went to him because he has a lot of power. And it was a little bit like eating a plate of fried worms. But I went to him and I said, here's our proposal for getting sustainability into the Gen Ed core requirements. How are we going to get this through? If you were going to do this, I'm not asking whether you agree or not, because he loves shooting, pot shots and everything. I just want your strategic mind here. If you were going to get this done, how would you do it? You know what he said? He said, create 2 proposals for changing the Gen Ed core requirements. Make one really attacking to people's pay and their territoriality, and put that out there, and then do the one with the sustainability and the Gen Ed core requirements. Sailed through, right? And of course, he didn't stand up and fight against it because it was his strategy. So you'll be a little smart as to how you do the management of the support for things, but it didn't take much time. And it shifted a lot of things at the school. So let me go back to this education for a sustainable society. What are the adult roles? We just talked about workers, how to get green jobs and sustainability jobs. But our students are also consumers. And a big, big percentage. I read the other day, 86%. I can't even believe that. I got to go fact check. Our GDP is based on our consumption. Whew. I mean, I know we don't manufacture a lot, but still, whew, that's a lot, right? And of course, it drives supply chains and worker conditions and environmental conditions all over the world, what we consume. So we've got to prepare them for their role as consumers, because it's a powerful role where they can make changes, and as investors. I just got a grant. I'm very excited. It came through my inbox yesterday. And it's because the fossil fuel people and some other people who want to get their hands on investors' money are attacking ESG. You know what ESG is? Environmentally and socially responsible and governance responsible businesses. And they're attacking mutual funds that are made up of those kinds of investments. And they're attacking brokerage houses that have screens for environmental and social. And so there's a small group of us who are saying, why, you want us to be irresponsible in our investments? You want us to do bad things in the world? What's wrong with being environmentally responsible, socially responsible? Yeah, we got to clean up our metrics a little bit. We agree with that, but why are you saying people should pull their money out of businesses that do the right thing and put them into businesses that hurt people in the planet? I actually got a grant to do that, to educate young people on social media and to create materials that you can use in your, wherever you are in your world. So, you go do the right thing. People say to me, how do you raise money for the stuff you do? And I'm like, I don't. I just go do the right thing, and then people find out what we're doing, and then they offer money. I'll talk to you more about that if you want. But investors, all of your students are going to be investors in their own financial future. So workers, consumers, investors, community members, and voters, do I even need to say how voters is relevant, right? Okay. So the good thing is, the skills we need to create effective change agents for a sustainable future are the same skills we need that employers value. So Krista Heiser and I wrote this chapter on this where we looked at what do employers value in terms of what they hire, proactive problem solvers who make the business a better place, a more prosperous place, a place that's not going to get called out for being environmentally or socially irresponsible because it'll hurt their reputation and their bottom line. Oh, same skills that employers like, to be a proactive problem solver who's assertive and who's emotionally intelligent and all those other change agent skills, works for both. Here are the Sustainable Development Goals. How many of you have seen these? Can you raise your hand so I know what I'm working with here? Can you look around the room so you know what you're working with here? Well, keep your hands up if you've seen these before. It's okay if you haven't, but you need to go look. These were, close to 200 countries that came together and said it's not just what we've been calling sustainable development before. You want to make the world a better place, let's break it down into how. Let's have a goal of getting rid of poverty and zero hunger and good health and well-being. You can read the 17 of them. They're very inspiring. You know what's funny? You can actually dig into some of them, and we've gotten better. We're moving in the right direction. The pandemic set us back on a few of these, but the progress is inspiring. But we're going to have to handle this climate change stuff, or else it's not going to be so inspiring moving forward. So just Google in Sustainable Development Goals. It will come up for you. There's descriptions, there's indicators, there's targets, there's lots of wonderful stories of people making a difference. You are part of an amazing family of human beings around the world that are working on this. People will often say to me, why aren't you doomed and gloomed, Deb? It's because when I'm working on the solutions, it feels so good. So I mentor a national youth coalition called Change the Chamber Lobby for Climate. And I mentor an international youth coalition called Youth for Climate Education. You can look it up, youthforclimateeducation.org. They're just getting their website. We'll look at it again in 3 months. But every other Tuesday morning, we're on the phone with 50 to 100 people from Africa. And they're telling us, it's one thing to read about the floods in Nicaragua, it's another thing to hear about their aunt who got swept away in the river and the pictures. And it brings it to a whole different level. But also to tell about the solutions, the wonderful things they're doing. Often without any money at all, but they're just with a passion of wanting to be part of the solutions. And last week we did a kickoff in Asia for Central Asia, like all those, this is going to sound really ignorant, and it is. You know all those countries that end with Stan at the end? Yeah. So they were all in this group, Kazakhstan, you know what I'm saying. And they have this whole initiative on how to live a sustainable lifestyle. The whole European Commission is doing that. Costa Rica, you guys are already champions of that. Like, did you come in and give a presentation on what people in the U.S. need to do to live a more sustainable lifestyle? Tell it to the next group who come in, because we have a lot to learn from your country about that. You've made the commitments, you passed the policies, you put in the renewables, you've done the systemic changes, and I just gotta go, teach us. Because really our decisions are important. Our decisions are going to create more scarcity and human suffering and lots of fear and lots of people not acting very nicely to each other, or it's going to create a future of greater abundance, better relationships, and higher quality of life. Where would you like to be? So my first class, I teach a thing on procrastination. Here's what happens when you procrastinate. The students fill it in. Here's what happens when you don't procrastinate. The students fill it in. Okay, what have you done in your life when you couldn't procrastinate? Like showing up for my sister's wedding. I could not procrastinate. What did you do to get yourself there on time, or to get the project done on time? Then they create this big list, because even though they're procrastinators, they know how to not procrastinate when they really can. And then I say, okay, make copies of that, hang it up all over your house, and you will keep a journal every week about what you did this week to stop procrastinating, to be less of a procrastinator. And they often tell me it's the best part of the class, that and the relationship skills. This is also a decision. future look like if we don't address the sustainability challenges? They can tell you what goes underneath there. What'll happen if we do? They can brainstorm it with you. What can we do to make a difference? You know how long that takes in a class? 10 minutes. You know how engaged they are in listening to what comes next when you do this? And then you say, the things I'm going to teach you next are about getting to which one you want to live in. Oh, by the way, which one do you want to live in? And then they make a choice. That's a moment of choice. Choice moments are really important when we're teaching. So sustainability has been integrated into all these different areas. So today we're talking about curricula. You guys do research? Anybody here do research? A research paper? Okay. Those of you who do research, go to SDG Compact Fellows. Every Tuesday morning, I'm on the phone with all these publishers who are where the journal editors are for all these journals, and we're connecting research to communities. So SDG Compact Fellows, I may have it in the resources. If not, we can do it in the questionnaire. So we'll talk about curricula. You got a net zero coming in here at this college yet? Okay, so there's an opportunity for student engagement, right? In helping the institution move forward in a nurturing, nudging way. Purchasing, you got a circular economy purchasing policies. They're out there, you can just copy them over, right? Professional development, we've got that today, right? Student life, I think there's somebody here maybe from student life and all these community outreach and partnerships, but legislative advocacy is really important. Anybody here know Jerry Weber? Jerry Weber was a president of one of the couple of other colleges around here, Kankakee and College of Lake County, and he was a real champion for sustainability. He used to walk around and hand out the book, There Is No Plan B, and he paid my way to go to Washington, D.C., so I could present at the American Association of Community Colleges. Just heard me speak and said, you got to come and talk to all these college presidents. And I gave my presentation, and she stood up and said, we got to do this. And that's how we started having all these programs related to sustainability around the country in all disciplines. He's a hero. He passed away of cancer very quickly about a year ago. Okay, learning outcomes. I don't know what your learning outcomes are, but here's some that you can compare to. They should know what the word means. That's number one. They should be able to change their daily, I missed one. They should know how their actions impact sustainability. Oh, you just bought that, you just did that, you just supported that. How does all of that impact sustainability? They should be able to change their daily habits and behaviors. And I gotta tell you, this is not just individual anymore. We can't fix the world just by doing individual lifestyle changes. We've got to do systems work. We've got to change organizations. But, okay, they need number 3 too, but that's why we have to teach number 4. Don't worry, you'll get these slides. You won't remember yours. Number 5 is they've got to learn change agent skills. So once they understand the systems, they can apply systems change to their campus and their community. That's what they practice while they're here as students, and then they apply it to the world. I don't care what discipline you teach, you can also fit this in. And that's what we're going to do today, okay? So it matches what's going on around the world, and I can share with you all those declarations. Now, this is the most up-to-date. If you look at the literature review on sustainability learning, this is the most up-to-date. So you can read this, it just puts it into these different buckets, but the same kind of stuff with what I'm saying. And Katja Bergiers, love that woman. I think there's a J missing in her spelling of her name, I apologize. But anyway, that's the paper, you should look at it. And then I gave you, just in case you like to look at citations and UN stuff, I gave you other stuff too, so that you can read more. But please don't get stuck in reading. We need actions now, not just reading. Okay, here's the fun. Where does this fit into your discipline? So, anybody teach Psychology, physics, biology, chemistry, or economics, would you raise your hand? Okay, I will be quiet. Can you read it? Can you see it from there? These are just examples of how it can fit into your classes. If you want to yell out other things that aren't on that list, that's fine. These aren't on the edge anymore, this stuff. If it's not showing up in your textbooks, you are using the wrong textbook. We went to the U.S. Department of Energy and we said we need to convene the textbook publishers because it's not enough to have sustainability modules over here and teach people who come to events like this to use it. Think of all the adjuncts. Think of the people who didn't come. You need it in the textbooks. And I'd like to use the U.S. government's name to do that. So they said, well, we don't know if it's in our budget yet, but it's a good idea. And I said, this was like, I don't know, 8 months ago. I said, you know, we can't wait for you any longer. So we're just going to go ahead and do it. Who's we? You know, so I'm standing in that one DuPont building. Remember that all those years ago? And we invited them to convenings. I couldn't get past the secretaries to get to the CEOs because I didn't have a title. So 12 of us sat down and made up this thing. We made it up. The U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development. If I had it to do over again, I'd call it Education and Actions for Sustainable Development. And so I became head of the higher ed division, and then I became president, and now I could get past any gatekeeper to talk to anybody. And so now I go to the, federal agencies. And I say, you need to do this. And they say, we don't have budget. And so I say, okay, we're going to do it anyway. So I found another nonprofit. We put together the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. We've been holding solution summits. How hard is it? It's a webinar. You hold solution summits. I'm very good at collecting contacts so I can invite people later. Glad to share my contacts with you. Listservs, contacts also. We get hundreds of people to come. We've got 4,000 in our virtual community, and that's small in comparison to what it, needs to be. But eventually, the U.S. Department of Energy came in and said, okay, so now we're convening. The reason I keep looking at Jose is because we're working with him, and not just him. And he's a systems actor. He's working with programs all over the country in community colleges and helping to get this into curricula that's going to be in the textbooks, easy for teachers to teach. So we've had a project of getting sustainability in textbooks for 2 decades. And if your textbook doesn't have it, either change textbooks or call a publisher and tell them you want it in the textbook. And I got paid $1,000 for putting 6 boxes on sustainability into a global business textbook. But maybe you do it for free over a week. And come on, it's not that hard to put in the sustainability stuff. If you're not sure how to do it, let us know. We'll give you people who can help do it. Oh, I got stuck on those disciplines. Here's some other ones. Any of you teach these? Go ahead. You read. I'll be quiet. Even if you don't teach these, you might get some ideas by reading it. How many of you have heard of the circular economy? It's this great movie called The Story of Stuff. You can just Google it in and it'll come up and it'll show that most of the stuff we buy turns into waste and lots of toxins along the way. But a circular economy, when you first design the product, you're thinking about how it's going to be used at the end of its life cycle so that it doesn't turn into toxic waste. I gotta tell you, the Costa Rican guests that you have are sitting here going like this, right? You know these concepts, right? To graduate somebody from higher education and not have them know about these concepts in today's day and age, there's a language that would call that a shanda. It's shameful. You're graduating them with an illiteracy about crucial societal issues that will cause massive human suffering if we don't address it. And you'll see that I've got clean energy and circular economy up there. Let me talk about climate change for a second, because I could do a whole other thing on climate change and I won't. Anybody in here who thinks climate change is a hoax? Anybody in here who doesn't know that it's being caused by the burning of fossil fuels? And a few other things, but mostly the burning of fossil fuels. Okay, so we have 7 years left to reduce greenhouse gases by 50% to take our last shot at stabilizing the climate. And this is my first speech where I am saying we're not going to make it. And it makes me deeply sad to have to say that in a speech. But we still can prevent the worst impacts of climate change. In case you weren't looking, we are all looking at a massive, fatal car accident that's coming in slow motion. Except it's not a car accident, it's climate change. But think about it as a car accident. You're watching it, and you see that 2 billion people will either die or have to leave where they live now, according to the latest Princeton study. They literally won't be able to be outside. And I'm like so deeply sorry, because Costa Rica is going to be one of those places I could just go. I have some grief about that. I love Costa Rica. And what's really weird is my ancestors who got taken to Siberia because they wouldn't support the Tsar in Russia, and Siberia was an awful place. My descendants will be living in Siberia because that will be one of the new breadbasket places. You haven't read about these details yet? Did you read the New York Times article on what's going to happen to Chicago? Oh, and there's graphics. Sewage in those lower streets. It's a great article. It'll get you moving. Anyway. Really good news is we already have the technology. It's already cost effective to meet those science-based targets for 2030. And what is the bad news is what's standing in the way is people acting like business as usual. Oh, there's a car accident. All of those billions of people are going to be hurt. Hey, are you going to play tennis with me today? What do you have time for? Where are you putting your priorities? Do you know how to be part of the solution? Do you know how to empower your students to be part of the solution? I'm not saying don't play tennis, but maybe you fit in some of this stuff at a deeper level than you can do. And let's dig into that right now. If you want to communicate with people all around the world who are working on this, you can go to our Green Learning Network. It was actually given from multiple UN agencies to the youth. And the youth turned around and gave it to the adult organizations and said, you people aren't moving fast enough. And so we've got all sorts of cool stuff going on there. We can talk about that later. If you want to know more about renewable energies, you can go to IRENA. They have an energy educator network. Look, I teach psychology. How can I talk about energy? When you're teaching classical and operant conditioning, you can use examples as you teach operant conditioning about more energy efficient behavior. You're teaching art, you can teach about public art and examples of shifting consciousness around climate change. You name a discipline, we can talk about really exciting things that you can do with this information. Here's the little book of Green Nudges, that's about the lifestyle stuff. Here's my global guidance document. How did I end up writing a global guidance document? I called the United Nations Environment Program. I showed up at a webinar they did, and I put some stuff in the chat. That's my strategy for how to get attention. And I said, you need a global guidance document. But it's just a mess. All of the stuff out there on green jobs, and young people need this information, and people who want to change careers need this information. So let's do a global guidance document. And they went, oh. I said, come on, let's get started. When are you open next Tuesday? I can do Tuesday or Wednesday. So for a year, we met, we looked at what was out there, we compiled it, we had youth from community colleges and other places who came and helped us do it. And then we sent it out to all these bigwig places to review it so that people would think it was a bigwig document, but it's a useful document for things you can do. So this link right here goes to this. Remember I said I convene people? Yeah. So this is, you want to get to the faculty, go to where they go. And some of them go to their academic societies. So all of these organizations have been part of, and more, I'm not going to show them, have been part of the Disciplinary Association's Network for Sustainability. And so they know that they have to put sustainability into what they do. So I think all of your disciplines are in here. I won't go through the rest of them. But there's a resources page where you can get ideas about how to teach this. That's the higher ed stuff. It's in the national. If you want to get it into your core requirements for all degrees, here's the story about how we did it. I guess it was longer, 2002 is when I published that. And also that Positive Futures Fair thing, I think is in that one too. Yep, it is. Okay, so we already know we want to create change agents. We want to move beyond being apathetic, fearful, and obedient to being caring, effective, and involved as change makers. And use the campus as a living lab to show the community what they can do. You know what they did in LA? They not only did they put solar, you got solar collectors on this campus? Yes, no? No? Oh, well go up to Kankakee or College of Lake County. Aren't they near you? Aren't they near here? Yeah, go look at what they've done. There's so much money coming down now from the federal government for this thing. Your purchasing office, your facilities office should be like way on top of this, and if they're not, then start a student project. You know that Positive Futures Fair I talked about? You know that the students had to tell the story of how they got from today to a positive future using 11 psychology concepts, 8 economic concepts, 7 American government concepts. So not just learning the stuff and spitting it back on the test, but showing how you could apply it to make the world better and teaching each other, because they got marked down if the concepts conflicted with each other. So you walk into the rooms where the small groups are talking and they're having these discussions. No, you don't understand. Let me explain to you supply and demand. Yeah, but you don't understand the way that, super PACs work. And it was great. They really learned because they were applying it. Okay, I want to get you to do stuff. I want to make sure we don't run out of time. But here's, I'll need change agent skills, Deb. I know how to teach biology, how am I going to do this? It's quite simple, actually. I can put it all right there. You ask the students to look at the societal problems, have a little discussion. What's wrong with our society? What needs to be improved? They'll tell you. Keeps them up at night. Or they go into apathy about it, which is not healthy psychologically. Find the solutions. Let's brainstorm the solutions. Convene the decision makers and facilitate the changes. I had a mentor who told me a story when I was 12 years old and it stuck with me. She had started the first food program for pregnant women and children in Detroit before there were food stamps, before there was the WIC program. And I went to her and I said, you're literally a housekeeper mom, stay-at-home mom. Like, how did you do this? She said, oh, Debbie, when you see a problem, you just think about what the solutions are, and then you go talk to the decision makers and invite them to make a difference. So she went to warehouses that she saw were empty, and she said, who owns this warehouse? She called them up, said, we need your warehouses to help feed these women and children that will starve otherwise. And then she went to a trucking company, and she said, we need you to donate some trucks and some drivers. And then she went to the federal government. She said, you got warehouses full of food. And then they run out of their dates. You got to throw them away. We want to feed pregnant women and children in them. And then she went to a religious leader in Detroit and said, you need to start a nonprofit so that you can run this program on an ongoing basis. How gutsy. How gutsy. When was the last time you were gutsy? community college professor, right? So I hear about this UN conference that's going on about sustainable development, and I emailed the people. I said, is anybody coming from the United States? They said, no, we've contacted the White House, and they don't have anybody to send. I said, but there's so much going on in the United States. And they said, would you like to come be the keynote speaker? And I went, and it was like in a country where I didn't speak the language, and I'm like, but I did it. And then I became a keynote speaker at the next one, a keynote speaker. Oh, great hint. You know how you go to conferences and you're like in one of those sessions? Somebody gave me a piece of career advice. They said, the next time somebody asks you to come, oh, and I would go to the conferences, I'd hand out little slips of paper in the sessions before mine, about my session, and I'd stand up during questions and answer and ask a question, because you gotta get people to come. You wanna build a trend, right? And then they'd say, please come back. And this person said, tell them you only do keynotes now. Who am I to say that? And I said it. And they said, okay. So we were very privileged, right? Open community college. If I got accepted to speak at a conference, they would pay my way, but that only lasted a year. And then they came and they said, Debbie, you're using all the travel money. You and your colleagues, you can't keep doing that. So we switched to doing the keynotes where they pay you. And then you can support the projects you want too. Who's that? Okay, so what are the other change agent skills? Find leverage points for systemic change. By the way, if the car accident was right here, wouldn't you do something gutsy? Wouldn't you try and pull that kid out from that car that's coming? The car accident is right here. Business as usual isn't okay. Especially when the solutions exist. Especially when you can inspire your students with it. So how do you tell the students to be change agents? Let them find the leverage points for systemic change. Here's one, chemistry. Does somebody teach chemistry? Yeah, there's a Green Chemistry Institute. What do? We called the American Chemical Society. We said, where's your textbook that teaches about green chemistry through the whole thing? And they went, we don't have one. I said, who is interested in it? We've got some people who keep calling us about it. Oh, great, I'll convene a meeting. What do I know about green chemistry, right? I'll convene a meeting. Found somebody who was already writing a textbook and then made sure that got out through all the communications that we could to others. So find leverage points for systemic change, build coalitions of support, just other people who think like you. You gotta be persistent and resilient. I see too many students and too many instructors, they try to make a change, it doesn't work, and they spend the rest of their life licking their wounds and talking about how they tried. And then they talk about in a cynical tone that you can't make change. Really? Is that what you tell your students when they don't do well on a test? Well, clearly you're not cut out for this. You would never say that, right? What do you say? You say, we're going to learn from it and move on. We can learn from this and move on, but they've got to be persistent and resilient, and we've got to teach them those skills and celebrate each step. I'm sorry you're not going to prevent the whole car accident, but you could do some amazing work that you will be so proud of. It'll be the stuff you tell your kids and your grandkids, and fitting it right into what you do in your class. You also have to manage the emotional climate so people want to continue to be involved. Have you brought up climate change in your class? How many of you have? Would you raise your hand? What was it like? I want to hear. What are the students, were they excited about solutions, or were they feeling doom and gloom?
We were very disappointed about, when they found out about all the changes that are going on in the world. We read a whole series of articles about floodings and wildfires and, everything. I think we read like 5 or 6 articles. But the thing is, they constantly come up with the conclusion that there's nothing they could do.
Right? Like the opposite of the conclusion inclusion that we want. So that means we don't have the tools yet to give them. Here's how you can get involved. I'll give you those by the time we get done, and you'll create them yourself. Anybody else have a different response? Yep. Over here.
They don't have a choice, they have to come up with solutions, that's what I hope.
Yeah, if you say you will come up with solutions, did they figure some stuff out? Did they act on it?
I don't know about that, because it was the last class, but yeah.
Oh, what if it had been the first class?
We didn't get to that topic.
Maybe flip the syllabus, right? So one of the things I love to do is every class I say, how can you use what we've learned today to make the world a better place? How can just anything you teach, anything at all, how can we use what you've learned today to make the world a better place? You tell them up front you're going to be asking that question throughout the whole semester, and it changes the way they think. That you might want to take a note on, because I don't have a slide on that. How can you use what you learned today to make the world a better place? If you don't take anything else out of this, start with that in your first lecture. Put it on some of your test questions. Add it as when when they glaze, you know what it's like when they glaze and you know they're not paying attention anymore. Say, hold on, we got to do a little discussion. How can you use what we're learning right now to make the world a better place? And you've got to manage the emotional climate in your classroom so they stay excited about the learning, you know that, and also excited about the solutions. So my young people, who are your young people, created an environmental change makers toolkit. And it includes coping skills. I'll do this because I don't use the mouse. So this is their website called Change the Chamber. They went after the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for being anti-climate solutions. That's what they're called, Change the Chamber. And then they had 60 phone calls with legislators. And when the climate bill passed, the Inflation Reduction Act passed, these guys got an invitation to the White House. Were acknowledged for the work that they did. Who are they? Just students from all over the country who come together. We meet Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 o'clock, and then we have like 10 other team meetings a week, and anybody can join them. We call them Climate Fellows. If you just go to changethechamber.org, which is the beginning of this URL, and your students can be a part of it. And we do internships, we do all sorts of stuff. So look at their topics: self-care and resilience, creating and improving relationships, communicating information effectively, creating systemic change, jobs and careers, learning and life tips. They wrote this. Here's the global guidance document on green jobs. So you can look at that. It's got 81 resources. And if you want to join the international community so that you learn more about the solution summits, there's the link to that. So STEM disciplines plus psychology. If you're a STEM discipline or you're a psychology teacher, would you raise your hand so I know what we got? Oh, great. Mostly sitting at one table right now. So here's a website called Sustainability Improves Student Learning. It was a U.S. Department of Education grant, a FIPSI grant that we got, and it was made up of these disciplinary societies. So physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, engineering, career and tech ed, math, biology, geoscience, more math, and computer science. And each of them have a page on how to teach sustainability. But the page that I like on here is the one on empowering students, because there's a little self-assessment tool where students can reflect on what kind of change agent they are. So you can have them reflect on it at the beginning of the semester and at the end of the semester, and they can say, well, I have these skills, and I need to improve in these skills, and you can make your own, but we're here. I'm here to make it easier for you and to not overwhelm you. That's the problem, is there's so much good stuff out there right now, it can be overwhelming. Don't be overwhelmed, it's a waste of time. You know, your students get overwhelmed, right? Do you help them manage their feelings of being overwhelmed? And you say, hey, everybody gets overwhelmed sometimes, just notice it and keep moving forward. It's like such a breakthrough for so many students. anything with us. So we've got learning activities there and all sorts of things, including stuff I don't have time to mention. Okay, and then this is all about not getting stuck in just the doom and gloom and helping students be part of the solutions, how you can do all sorts of great stuff around that. Now, the best assignments are the ones where students can make a difference in the world. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to be quiet as you read the discipline that's useful to you. And these are just brainstorm examples from another institution. Maybe a couple I combined. But there's so many more. You're going to make some in just 2 minutes. All of these things have happened. They're not just ideas. I love that garbage one under chemistry, but they're all good. I don't have time, you're going to have to read it on your own, but now it's time for this. You have got 5 minutes. I want you to take a big idea that you need to teach in your course, and it could be a community partner sustainability need, a societal sustainability need, but create an applied learning activity that includes both. If you happen to know of community partners, usually when we have them in the room, we say work with a community partner. You'll be sharing what you come up with in the large group. If you feel stuck, raise your hand. I want you all to have an assignment that's an activity where students are out in the world helping to make something more sustainable using your discipline concepts. 5 minutes, go. If you're stuck, raise your hand. In 5 minutes, I'm just going to go around and say, what activity? Great. Okay. What's that?
Some places.
So Chima is one of our organizations. Do you know Ishi? So if you go to Ishi, then you go to ES, it will switch to a different URL. And look up the Chima resources, and then you want to reach out and ask the questions. And then you also want to go to the I2 Who's stuck? Anybody stuck?
Yeah, they could even map
You each have your separate activities already? Yeah. Go ahead. You got it, you got it. What discipline do you teach?
I'm actually an academic advisor for a scholarship program.
Yeah, that's great.
So we need
History. So history's about what have we done in the past to warm up the environment or cause unnecessary suffering? What have we learned from it? So once they learn the lessons, right, and you ask them, where's my bee? How have we screwed up as a species of our what lessons are there? Can we make a brochure, lessons from history, and how to help them with their future? And then we can present it in the school. It's fine. You're fine. Yeah.
I know, but that's what
Those slides were there? Yeah, so I don't do a template, and you have to fill into this box, because it's like history, I could have told you 1,500 times, right? So there isn't like just one. It's your imagination.
it was like source like 13,000.
Okay, let's hear it. We're doing that 9 minutes. Okay? Does everybody have one? Does everybody have one? Anybody not have one? Okay, who wants to go first? Don't worry, who wants to go first? Who wants to go first? Go ahead. Please stand up at the top loud.
Hello. I'm Valerie. I'm an academic advisor for 1 Million Degrees, and the idea that I came up with was create a sustainable garden on campus utilizing green power and creating volunteer internship roles or using a class for credits, and either using the fresh ingredients in the cafeteria or for the student food pantry.
Building a sustainable garden on campus that is using green energy and it's fed through the cafeteria. It's happening all over the country. You could use a hoop house, so you could do year-round food production because you may not have as many students in the summer. There you go. You could look at USDA for grants if you need funding. Okay, who's next? I didn't have time for applause of each one, so let's all applaud. So who's next? Who's next? Okay, great. Yeah, you do because we're taping it.
So actually, I'm speaking for both myself. We teach at the College of Education. Laura teaches communications, speech communications. I teach biology. So we're going to be teaching a learning community next semester, which combines small group communication with environmental biology. And so the project that I think we're going to do next semester is we are going to put the students into small teams, have them pick one of the SDG goals, and have them look on campus for the things that we are already doing right with the SDG goals, and then find where the gaps are. So we want the end product to be a field guide to the college as a living lab, so that we can then encourage the campus to put signs in each building that demonstrate the sustainability practices in action. And if we start with the positive, we figure we can convince the college to do the things that they're not here to do.
Don't you love that? I love that. Yeah, okay, I can't help myself. Who's next? Okay, great. Did you see you did this in 4 minutes, right?
So I work with English language learners, and like I told you, my students were stuck. They didn't know what they can do, what change they can make, except that they did hear something about recycling, right? So I'm thinking I can have the lower level students do some research in the library, because most of them are parents, okay? Most of them are, well, not most of them, at least half of them are members of PTO. So anyway, whether they are members or not. So the lower level students, they can do some research in the library and find picture books for children that can, they can make a presentation in the class. A lot of parents visit their children's classes. They can make a presentation about the books that they're here in the library, and they can teach you how to recycle. And the students of any level, lower or advanced level, they can do, if they are artistic, they can do some art projects about recycling. And I'm thinking the advanced level students, they can do some research and make a presentation and create a YouTube video about recycling for their students, for their teachers who go to school. And maybe, most of our students, children, they're also English language learners, so this would be really good.
That's wonderful. Do you hear the imagination rolling? It's just gonna roll. I have one piece of feedback. Don't do recycling. Recycling is a broken industry. So what we've got to do instead is circular economy. It'll open up a lot more positive possibilities. And a lot of you got taught about recycling when you were young, and it was a mistake. We should have talked about the broader ones. So say,
in our low calculation class, what we can do, actually, I think
hold it up. I can't believe you're actually too quiet for once.
What I would want to do is in our low calculation class, we can do an energy audit for one of the buildings in the school and then come out with the results. But then also try to find ways to improve the energy consumption of that building and present it to the facilities department. And then maybe in future classes, we can just take different buildings. Because I think one of the things that needs to happen is in education, with all the buildings that we have, we need to set that precedent. Because if they see it in the colleges, they see that we're doing it, people will most likely adapt.
Yeah, I love that. So my students have been doing that for 47 years. We actually use buildings in the community. You might want to talk to the facilities guy first so he doesn't freak out that you're doing this. And then I would suggest you present to the board, not just to the facilities department, because you really want them to get aware. And bring along the facilities guy. We're helping him. He's not doing his job, because you need them to be willing to implement it, right? But we've done the jail, we've done the county courthouse, my students who are like, they're heating and cooling guys, right? They're like, I can't believe I have to take this class. And at the end, they're like, I'm so proud of my audit. And they have all sorts of other career pathways. Okay, one more. One more? No?
Well, actually, this is not something that I just thought about. It's something that I'm doing right now with my students in Costa Rica. I'm teaching integrated for systems engineering students. I gave them an assignment, and they have to build an eco brick. So they use a bottle, plastic bottle, and they have to put inside all the things that you cannot recycle, So they put it inside, and they have to compress the bottle until you create a brick. So with that brick, we will build art or sidewalks or other public structures. So how can we do that? Well, I also work for Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and we have this partnership with them. So I will take all the bricks and I will give it to their company, and they will handle to build the structure with some volunteers. And also, what they have to do about this, well, they are learning about the importance, and they have to make to write a reaction paper about the importance and what they learn about the
Reflection. Reflection is crucial, right? They need to be able to reflect on what they've done. That's fantastic. So I don't know, are you guys the members of ASHE? I think it costs $2,500. This clearly is a school that has some budget. It's got 13,000 resources, and so you can go into the hub and you can see, you can actually look at it when you're not a member, but it's a lot of the stuff is member locked, but you can see enough that then you can Google it in, you can sign up for the bulletin, which is free. 13,000 resources. But don't get overwhelmed with what's out there. Don't try to be perfect. Just continue to go. So can we give an applause now for what you guys did? Here's a few things that we didn't have time for today, and I thought we would. One is for those of you who are already champions. We need to institutionalize this stuff. We need to get it into job descriptions and annual performance reviews. We need to get it into who we look for new positions. We need to get it into career advising, into our strategic plan, into the budget, so people are in positions where they can institutionalize it, nudge them. And if we had time, we would have done a professional development activity on how do you institutionalize it. You can go through the rest of these slides on your own. This is the work we're doing on green jobs around the world. I did already cover that piece. You can work with your local businesses, help them grow and improve their profits, and work with you and hire your students by helping them go green and sustainable. I already talked about that. This is what we did at the American Association of Community Colleges. It's a free site. It's a little dated actually, but we're updating it now, but it's got all sorts of resources for you. Here's a self-assessment tool for your whole college. I would really suggest some folks sit down and take a look at that one. It's particularly in the career areas, but it's useful across the board. And you got to do stuff in your career advising, because otherwise your students call me and I can't take more phone calls. They got to get it from you instead, right? So help them find the career pathways. This is a thing I did for the World Bank a while ago, a couple of years ago, and we put together a resources doc on changing the curricula, so you might find it useful. Look, I know you're busy, and you don't know this stuff, so be the sage, not the sage on the stage. Be the guide on the side. Empower the students to find the answers along with you. Make it inclusive. You have a very unique and important role to play. Be positive while acknowledging the sadness. Did you see how I did that today? Acknowledge the sadness. Don't let it stop you. You can choose a more sustainable future. Congratulations for all you've done, but even more so, congratulations for what you'll do in the future. There's my email if you want it. Thank you, everybody.
As she mentioned, we will be sharing out the PowerPoint slides with all attendees today so that you can access these resources. We have a 10-minute break until our next sessions. All of our next sessions will be upstairs, and the program schedule is in the folder.
One thing before you leave, I would be remiss. I've been working for multiple years with iGen, the Illinois Green Economy Network. That's a coalition of community colleges in Illinois. They've got all sorts of great resources and materials. I think you guys are part of it. So if you want to talk more about iGen or anything we talked about today, I'll hang out here for a few minutes, and thank you, everybody.